I'm Emily Mitchell, and last week, my whole life got turned upside down by a single phone call. It started with my sister demanding $150,000 straight from my savings. She wasn't asking, she was demanding. She said it was my job to pay up because I was the one with money. When I told her no, she just lost it. I thought that was the end of it, but I was dead wrong. 2 hours later, my dad sent me a text with an ultimatum so cold it didn't even seem real. Sign off on her mortgage or don't bother coming home. I just stared at that message. Then I did the only thing that made any sense. I bought a one-way ticket out of Nashville and started locking down every single account she'd ever gotten near. Old credit cards, shared logins, anything she had access to. I shut it all down. By midnight, my phone was blowing up. 37 missed calls. And I had a bad feeling this wasn't even the worst of it. Because there was a secret behind those calls, something I didn't know yet, something that would change how I saw my family forever. And once it was out, there was no going back, not for me and not for them. Before I tell you what happened after I shut down those accounts and why I had no choice but to walk away, make sure you follow, and stick around till the end. Because I never expected what came next, not from the people who were supposed to have my back. By mid-afternoon that day, my world still looked pretty normal from the outside. I was at my desk in my Nashville office, just answering emails and counting down the weeks till I could move to Toronto. My savings account was my ticket to that new life. It's why I'd said no to so many little things, and I guarded that money like other people guard family jewels. So when my phone lit up with my sister's name, I wasn't expecting a crisis. I figured it was just another update on her house search, another story about that dream house she'd been talking about for months. She was always going on about granite countertops and big yards, but she never once mentioned the pile of debt she and her husband were sitting on. I'd learned to just listen and not offer cash to keep a nice, safe distance between her wish list and my bank account. I answered the call, and her voice was instantly different. No small talk, no, "How's your day?" Just this smooth, urgent speech that she had clearly practiced. She went on about a house that had everything she ever wanted in a school district her future kids just had to be in for a price that sounded like a miracle if you weren't paying attention. The lender was all set. The seller was itching to close. The date was right around the corner. In her version of the story, everything was all lined up except for one missing piece. And that missing piece was me. She said they were short $150,000, and she didn't say it like a question. She said it like it was a fact. Like the next step was obviously for me to send the money and be a proud sister for helping out. The way she talked my savings weren't even mine. They were just some family fund that had been sitting there waiting for her. She tried to wrap up her demand and call it an opportunity. The way she spun it, I wasn't giving up years of my hard work. I was investing in their stability. She talked about guest rooms where I could stay and holidays we'd have around a table that my money paid for. She even talked about kids who would grow up in a home I helped buy. But underneath all the sweet talk, I heard something else. I was being set up to be their permanent ATM. The easy fix for when their bad choices finally came back to bite them. Everything she said just wrecked the future I'd planned for myself. I pictured all those nights I stayed late at the office, the mornings I skipped buying coffee just to save a few bucks, my whole Toronto plan on that spreadsheet flights deposits, first and last month's rent, a little safety net in case it all went south. But to her, all of that was no big deal, something I could just put on hold because her problem was more important right now. As she kept talking, I felt like I was being torn in two. One part of me was the younger sister who always just moved out of the way, the one who was taught that keeping the peace was way more important than having my own life. The other part was the woman who finally let herself imagine a life that wasn't about cleaning up somebody else's emergency. That first part knew how easy it would be to just say yes, to tell myself I could just build it all back up later. The second part knew that later never really comes. Sitting there under those buzzing office lights with my phone pressed to my ear and that cursor blinking on my screen. I got it. This wasn't really about them being short on their mortgage. This was about whether I was going to be everyone's safety net forever. If I caved now, this wouldn't be a one-time thing. It'd be like I was signing up to be the family rescuer every single time their plans fell apart. The second I let myself think that something inside me just got cold and hard, I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. What I felt right then was just clarity. I could either fight for the life I was building, or I could just hand it over and hope a thank you would be worth it. I already knew the thank yous would fade, but what it cost me wouldn't. For the first time, saying no didn't feel selfish. It felt like survival. By that evening, the whole situation felt so much heavier, like the entire day was setting me up for a hit I still didn't see coming. I tried to just go through the motions, closing my laptop, grabbing my things, and heading out to the parking lot, but every step felt like I was walking right into a storm. I knew whatever was next wasn't about a house or some number. It was about my place in this family, a place they decided for me a long, long time ago. When my phone buzzed again, the name on the screen was Richard Mitchell. I knew why he was calling before I even picked up. He's the type of guy who thinks being in charge means being firm, not fair, and what he wants he expects to get. I braced myself for it, for that familiar pressure that I'm only just now realizing ran my entire childhood. I spent my early years learning that the easiest way to get by was to just act like I didn't need anything. Whenever something went wrong, the fix was easy. I had to be the one to bend. If my sister needed space, I disappeared. If she wanted the spotlight, I got quiet. If she was struggling, I was always the one who had to compromise. I'd done it so many times that it stopped feeling like a choice. It felt like it was just my personality, not just something I did to keep things from blowing up. Standing there by my car keys in my hand, I finally understood how much of that was still stuck in me. I felt that old urge to make excuses for him to sugarcoat everything so nobody's feelings got hurt. But after everything that just happened, something in me snapped. I was done being the pushover. My mom called right after. Susan Mitchell always used feelings to get her way, just like my dad used his power. It was sneaky, but it worked. Her voice could make you feel guilty, but she'd say it so sweetly you'd think it was love. And for years, I fell for it. She always made it sound like making a sacrifice was the same as being loyal. It took me until I was an adult to see that I was the only one ever giving anything up. As she talked, I could hear what she wasn't saying. She just expected my stable life to be there to prop up someone else's fantasy. It was weird standing there in that dark parking lot realizing my own mother never saw me as a person, just a part I had to play. I wasn't her daughter, not in the way you'd think. I was the backup plan, the one she could always count on, the one who had to hold it all together when things went wrong. And that didn't feel good. It felt like I was mourning a family I only wished I had. After hanging up, I just kept thinking about all the little things that got us to this point, like all those holidays when nobody cared about what I'd done, or all the decisions they made without even asking me. They always said the same thing: keeping the family together was more important than being fair. Every memory came back so clearly, and I finally understood how things had always worked since I was a kid. It wasn't about us caring for each other, it was a pecking order. Brittany was at the top, never facing the music, always getting praised. My parents were right under her, making sure she was always comfortable, no matter what it cost them. And I was at the very bottom, keeping everyone else from falling apart just because I could. The second I thought about walking away, the whole thing started to shake. And that's what they were freaking out about. It wasn't about the money or the house. It was about losing the one person who quietly held everything together. Driving home, the city lights were just a blur. I finally started to feel all the things I couldn't deal with earlier. I was sad for the family, I wished we were angry about the role I was forced to play, and I just knew this was it. Everything was about to blow up. I could feel it coming like a change in the weather. It was small at first, but you couldn't miss it. And what I felt wasn't just anger or rebellion. It was something calmer, a feeling of knowing I couldn't fix years of this mess by just giving in again. If I kept playing my part, I'd be signing up for a lifetime of cleaning up messes I didn't make. And that thought, more than anything they said, made me sure of what I had to do. The night felt heavy as I pulled into my driveway, but it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. It was the feeling of deciding I was done being the silent fix for everyone else's drama. The change was quiet but huge. I had drawn a line inside myself, and I wasn't sorry about it. I had no idea how my family was going to react when they figured out I wasn't going to break. But for once, not knowing what was next didn't scare me. It felt like freedom. Later that night, my house was too quiet. It felt fake, like the walls were just waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. I had this knot in my stomach that just wouldn't go away. The way the day went down pushed me to finally do something I'd been avoiding. I needed to check every single one of my accounts. Not because I didn't trust myself, but because I didn't trust the people who were supposed to love me anymore. I opened my laptop, but I was nervous. You know that feeling when you're pretty sure you know the bad news you're about to find. The first account I checked was a credit card I hadn't touched in months. As the page loaded, my chest got tight. Seeing Brittany Mitchell's name as an authorized user felt like finding out the front door you thought was locked has been wide open this whole time. I'd completely forgotten she was still tied to any of my stuff. That realization just hit me hard. Scrolling through the charges felt like walking down a dark hallway I didn't want to be in. None of it looked like an emergency. There were charges for fancy home decor and expensive salon visits, and a weekend trip to someplace only rich people go. $7,000 just gone, quietly taken from a card I barely even remembered I had. It wasn't the amount that got me. It was how bold she was about it. She did it thinking I'd never even look. She did it because she thought she could get away with it. The more I stared at the screen, the clearer it got that the money was only a small part of it. This was about access. Access she never should have had. Access she used without a second thought. I thought about all the times I was told helping her was what family does. And for the first time, I saw those words for what they really were. They weren't about love, they were instructions, demands. They were orders dressed up to look like affection. I took her name off the account. The click of that button felt way heavier than it should have. Filing the fraud dispute felt surprisingly different, less emotional. It was just business. It was a step I had to take to get back control I didn't even know I'd lost. But that sick feeling didn't leave when I closed the laptop. If anything, it got worse. So I went through everything, checking savings, retirement, investments. I was looking at all the little settings I'd always ignored. The deeper I dug, the more I found these leftovers from old decisions. Decisions I really regretted now. Old recovery emails, shared logins, passwords I made when I was dumb enough to think it was safe. Then I opened a savings account I hardly ever use, and my blood ran cold. Under the beneficiary part, and there was her name, Brittany Mitchell, not as a co-owner, but as the person who would get all the money if something happened to me. It was set up 5 years ago. Back then, I just thought I was being nice. You know, helping out with wedding papers, trying to make things simple for both of us. I never imagined she'd see it as just another way to take things that were never hers. Changing that setting was more than just paperwork. It felt like I was taking back a promise I made, back when I was stupid enough to trust her. When I got the confirmation email, I felt this weird calm. Not happy, just free. I didn't see that coming. After I locked down my bank accounts, I started going through everything else online. I changed passwords I'd used for years, kicked off old devices, and set up security she could never guess. Every update felt like I was finally locking a door that had been left wide open. I had no idea how exposed I was, because you never think you'll need protection from your own family. As the night went on, it all started to sink in differently. It wasn't fear or anger, it was just realizing the truth. For years, I figured giving someone access meant you trusted them, and that trust was permanent. It never crossed my mind that people who depend on you might start acting like they're entitled to what you have. I was just sitting there in my dark living room with the quiet hum of my computer and my phone lighting up. I felt something shift in me, not like a big explosion, but like something was slowly turning. What I found wasn't just a money problem. It was a pattern, something I'd been making excuses for over the years. I'd always downplayed it and tried to justify it just to keep the peace. Tonight, I finally saw what that peace really cost me. The silence in my house didn't feel comforting anymore. It just felt honest, and that honesty showed me something I wasn't ready to face before. This was only the beginning. The next morning, you could feel this strange energy in the air, the kind you feel right before the truth comes out. I was sitting in the break room at work, holding a coffee cup I wasn't even drinking. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. It was like the day itself knew something big was about to happen. My mind kept circling back to a suspicion I couldn't ignore anymore. When I finally opened my email, the first message was from Ashley Brooks, my financial advisor. Seeing her name made my stomach drop, but I was also relieved. She's sharp, direct, and you can't pull one over on her. If she flagged something, it meant this was way bigger than just a family argument. We were in a place where numbers mattered more than feelings, and the facts don't care what you want them to be. Ashley's reports are always detailed, but this one felt heavy. I knew it was bad before I even opened it. She had pulled all my credit alerts, my account histories, and any financial activity with my name on it. This wasn't some little misunderstanding. It was a roadmap of all the decisions made behind my back. Decisions I'd been paying for without even knowing. The first part showed a bunch of applications for huge loans, all of them tied to Brittany Mitchell's household. They weren't just inquiries. They were full applications sent in like she knew they'd be approved. Seeing that pattern just shook me to my core. It meant she wasn't trying to build a stable life. She was just assuming I'd always be there to catch her no matter what. The next part of the report cut even deeper. Ashley had lined up all these missed payments, with the exact times Brittany had mentioned being stressed about money, but never told me the whole story. I saw unpaid bills, late fees, and a whole bunch of desperate tries to refinance. This wasn't just a rough patch. Their whole life was a mess, held together by wishful thinking and denial. But one part of the report really hit me hard. The part about their spending habits. Ashley had flagged charges from accounts that were supposed to be mine alone, accounts Brittany had no business knowing about. The pattern showed someone moving money around like they had every right to. And underneath it all, it was clear I'd been cleaning up their messes without even knowing it. Ashley's risk analysis made everything crystal clear. If I'd given her the money she demanded, I wouldn't just be losing my savings. I'd be stepping into a financial disaster they made. Their debt wasn't an accident. It was just how they lived. It was decades of bad choices with no self-control and no one holding them accountable. They weren't asking for help. They were asking for a bailout, and nothing about their past suggested they'd ever change. The realization finally sunk in, and it was a heavy feeling. It hurt, but it also opened my eyes. I'd spent years telling myself my sister was just careless, and my parents were just being loving. Ashley's report ripped those excuses to shreds. It wasn't optimism. It wasn't love. It was a system they built all based on the idea that I would deal with the fallout because I always had. When I scrolled to the final summary, something inside me just clicked. Ashley had listed what would happen if I kept helping them. My career plans would be shot, my savings would be gone, and I'd be in a financial hole for years. Seeing my future laid out like that made everything painfully clear. My family wasn't protecting my future. They weren't even thinking about it. They were just using my stable life as their own personal safety net. In that moment, everything changed for me. This wasn't a request for help anymore. I was looking at a trap one where I was never allowed to put myself first. Every single number in that report, every debt, every warning, it all showed me the truth I'd been trying to ignore. Helping them again wasn't going to save them. It was only going to destroy me. As I sat at my desk, the office noise just faded away. I felt this weird calm come over me. I wasn't angry or dramatic. I just saw things clearly because of the facts. This wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about survival, my survival. And as much as that hurt, the report made one thing impossible to deny. Whatever happened next, walking away wasn't abandoning them. It was the first time I had ever really stood up for myself. By late afternoon, the tension in the air felt so much thicker. It felt like everything was building toward a fight that was bound to happen. I tried to focus on work, hoping the routine would calm me down, but I couldn't. I couldn't shake this heavy feeling. I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. And when my phone buzzed again, I just knew that whatever it was going to push everything over the edge. The message wasn't from my sister this time. It was from Richard Mitchell. He sounded so sure of himself, like he always does. Just seeing his name made my chest get tight. It's that automatic reaction you get when you've been trained your whole life to just fall in line long before you even know what it's costing you. In his world, things were black and white. You did what was expected, and if you dared to question it, you were being disloyal. When I read his message, I wasn't shocked. I knew exactly what this was. It was the same old story I'd lived through 1,000 times. They dress up orders to look like advice and make demands sound like family duty. The only difference now was that I could see it all so clearly. This demand wasn't about them caring or trying to be fair. It was about their fear of losing control over the one person who always just took the hit and never said a word. Then another message popped up. This one was from Susan Mitchell, and her words had that familiar mix of sweetness and guilt. She had a way of making emotional pressure feel like love. She spins this whole story about how she's just concerned, but it always leaves me responsible for everyone's problems but my own. Reading her text, I felt that old instinct kick in, the need to fix things, to explain myself, to just give in. But underneath that feeling was a truth I just couldn't ignore anymore. Every single time I'd ever compromised, it just became the new baseline for what they felt they were entitled to. For years, I believed I had to sacrifice myself to keep the family together. I thought staying quiet kept the peace, that if I didn't have any needs, I'd be easier to love. But standing here with them demanding everything from me, something inside me just refused to repeat the cycle. I spent too long pretending that giving in was harmless. All it ever did was teach them that my boundaries were just suggestions. The change I felt wasn't about being a rebel. It just felt like I was finally seeing things clearly way later than I should have. I left work early. I needed room to breathe. Sitting alone in my car, all these memories came flooding back way too clearly. All the moments I was pushed aside, made to feel small, or just expected to jump in and save the day. They weren't just random events. They were all part of a system I'd been holding up without even knowing how heavy it was. I finally got it. Their panic wasn't about money. It was about keeping things exactly as they were because it always worked out for them. Me saying no wasn't just setting one boundary. It was threatening the entire system they built on me, saying yes. Driving home, I felt the tension turn into something sharper. Their messages weren't asking for help. They were giving me orders. They honestly believed they were entitled to my future. They thought they had a right to my stability and the life I'd built for myself. The more I thought about it, the more I knew their ultimatum was never a choice. It was a demand, and they were so sure of themselves because they assumed I'd fold. I always had before. But something had changed. I had changed. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the decision wasn't hard at all. I wasn't choosing between my family and my independence. I was choosing between repeating a cycle that had drained me for years, or finally stepping into a life where my decisions were my own. Inside the house, I was surprised at how calm I felt. I grabbed the travel folder I kept in a drawer, opened my laptop, and pulled up the flights I had looked at weeks ago. I'd always planned on going to Toronto. It was my fresh start, a place to rebuild without them dragging me down. But it never felt real, just something I'd do someday. But now it was the only thing that made sense. I clicked on that one-way ticket and my chest got tight, but it wasn't fear. It was something new. I was finally choosing me, and I wasn't sorry about it. Then the confirmation popped up, and for the first time in years, I felt strong instead of guilty. I wasn't running away, and this wasn't about getting even. I just realized my life wasn't up for debate anymore. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, that was it. Something inside me just clicked into place. It was the first step out of the box they'd kept me in for so long. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew one thing for sure. This was my choice. And for once, it was mine and mine alone. The quiet after that felt different. It's the kind of quiet you get when you've finally cut ties with your past. I remember standing in this little rental I got in Oak Park, just looking at all the half-unpacked boxes, and I felt so calm. For years, my family told me I was being reckless for wanting my own life. But this feeling, this quiet, it felt more real than anything had in a long, long time. It didn't take long to hear about Brittany. I got a bank alert from an old joint account I forgot I was even on. Her credit score had totally tanked. Late payments, maxed out cards. She had no one else to dump her debt on now. She was so used to just taking whatever she wanted. My money, my chances, my whole life. And now finally it was all coming back to her. I didn't feel happy about it. Just clear. You can't beg people to change. They only change when their whole world falls apart underneath them. What happened to Richard was quieter, but it cut deeper. His whole life was about keeping up appearances for the family. He was the kind of guy who cared more about what people thought of him than who he really was. When the neighbors found out he'd pushed his own daughter to sign papers she never wanted to, all that respect he lived for just vanished. In a town like Maple Glen, a reputation doesn't just crash and burn. People just stop talking to you. And for a guy like him, being ignored is way worse than any fight we could have had. Susan's payback was different. For years, her big thing was family loyalty. But when you don't have boundaries, loyalty is just a cage. When she finally got that, I wasn't coming back. No visits, no calls, no forced holidays. She lost that control she thought she had over me. Her texts got shorter, less sure of herself. It was like she didn't know who she was talking to anymore. I never wrote back. Sometimes staying away isn't mean. It's what you have to do to survive. Things in Chicago moved faster than I expected. My new job gave me a focus I hadn't had in years. Every morning I'd walk into that research lab and my work was just mine. Nobody could take credit for it, and no one could twist it to help themselves. That freedom felt like I was finally getting strong again after being weak for so long. I was done running from my family. I was finally moving toward the real me, the one who'd been waiting way too long to breathe. Weeks later, they tried to reach me one last time. It was a formal letter from the Mitchell family's lawyer. It wasn't a threat, just a pathetic try to blame someone else. I read it once, folded it, and shoved it in a drawer I never opened again. A few years ago, something like that would have broken me. Now it just felt like the end of a show I'd already walked out of. What got me wasn't that they kept trying. It was that they weren't sorry at all. They never once owned up to the pain they caused. Not one sign that they saw me as anything but a bank account they couldn't access anymore. That's when it all clicked, something I'd been feeling since I bought that one-way ticket. I wasn't abandoning them. I was setting myself free. The next few months changed me in ways I didn't even see at first. I could go grocery shopping without my chest feeling tight. My nights were mine, not spent waiting for my phone to light up with another demand. I'd wake up without feeling like the weight of their expectations was crushing me. Peace isn't always a big, loud thing. Sometimes it's just Nothing. No noise, no pressure, no feeling guilty. I'd think about Brittany every now and then, usually at work, when I was looking at financial reports. The patterns of spending too much, the constant denial, that rich kid attitude that someone else would always pay the bill. Her downfall wasn't some big drama. It was quiet and final. A denied mortgage, an eviction notice, and fewer people willing to bail her out. It was a real-world ending. Not a big explosion, just the thing that was always going to happen. As for me, I rebuilt my life and never looked back. I learned that healing isn't always a soft, gentle thing. Sometimes it's just deciding you're done with people who treat you like you can be replaced. It's when you stop having to defend your boundaries. It's having the guts to keep going, even when the past is screaming for you to come back. And here's the truth I need you to hear. Family can be a source of love, but it can also be the very first place that teaches you to give up on yourself. The real test isn't if you stay. It's if you see that staying is destroying you. Walking away didn't make me cold. It made me whole again. And if you ever have to choose between being needed and being respected, I hope you choose the one that lets you breathe.